Hello and welcome back to McClaren Performance, where today I want to look at big signings. So I'm going to look at examples like Lukaku, like Pogba, like Jack Grealish, see why they don't live up to the hype and why I really don't think they're so important. So obviously right now it's pre-season and the transfer window's open. So lots of people are talking about signings and signing players and especially signing big name players as well. In comparison to everything else, it's what fans I think are most concerned about, especially this time of year as well. And I see so many comments about it. I'm doing all this stuff, especially stuff related to Man United as well, and how they haven't signed players yet. Everyone's sign players all the time. And it raises a number of issues for me. Because, while recruitment is important, I think there's so much discussion in the media and amongst fans as well, where I think they really over-prioritise these things in a way that, for one, they think how it will solve all the problems within the club, or in other cases, is if this signing would unlock something within the team, have this specific aspect of play where they didn't have before, and with that, magically, the team will play better than they did, say, last season. For me, it's really an oversimplification in the media, whereby there needs to be this narrative of a person coming in and fixing the club, say, with a manager or with a player. And really, it's very surface level of what makes a good team, the reality of actually developing that. And to explain why I think that, I need to go to what I always call the process of winning, which is kind of my philosophy on psychology and teams, really developing winning teams. So the way in which I look at performance is in four parts, and the base of that is the culture, the environment, the interaction of people. That is what contributes massively to everything else. And what it firstly contributes to is the mind as well, the being able to play instinctively on the pitch, on the course, whatever. That then feeds into the players' performances, the actions, the performances of the team as a whole as well, which then, at the end of the day, feeds into the results and eventually whether that team wins or loses. And when I see people talk about their teams, let's say in football, especially from the media and fans as well, their focus is mainly on those two top things, the action and the result. And like I said, for me, that's such a surface level thing. So it's always team loses, manager bad, players not engaging. It's all the time now. They signed so-and-so for whatever amount. Why is he not performing? It must be, say, a poor attitude. And again, it's just surface level conversations. Something wrong with the system. The player doesn't care, or the player doesn't do this or doesn't do that. The reality is, though, there is so much more going on than just that. There's a world of things happening with regards to the process behind those actions and those results. I go back to that process of winning again. And when I always talk about that, the metaphor I always use is that of a tree. So you're tending to the soil and the roots of a tree. In this case, the culture and the psychology of the team and the players. And from that, you don't build a team, but you grow one. The idea of putting players and making these big signings, to me, is always about building a team. Where in reality, to build that long-term performance, you need to grow one. The main fault is that we look at players and performances as these isolated things. And it's a great quote that I use all the time now, which is that 70% of human behaviour is determined by the environment that we're in. And humans are built to function in teams, to communicate, to form hierarchies. They are not made to live and work in isolation. And with that, there is no individual hero. There's no big signing that's going to change that. They're not an isolated ball of talent and ability that can be transferred from one team to the other. It's just not as simple as that. For one, that individual player needs to function within the team in a psychological sense. They need to feel psychologically safe and to also know and understand the people around them, the vision of the team as a whole and what their individual place is within that. But there is also a tactical aspect to it as well. They may have had years learning to play in one system with other players, and now they may have to join a new one with new players as well. So there are those physical challenges as well when transferring from one team to another. And that's where Lukaku is a fantastic example of that. Evidently, he left a club in Inter Milan where he felt psychologically safe, where he knew his place within that club. He had that relationship with the manager and the rest of the people around him. He then moves to a new environment. It becomes this big signing with a big price tag on him. And everyone expects the actions and the results before the actual cultural and the psychological foundations. Additionally, on top of that, Lukaku's transitioning from playing as part of a front two in Inter Milan to being more of a central striker at Chelsea. And also, just on top of that, adapting to new people and adjusting again to the Premier League. And within that, he's being paid like he's the top dog, but maybe not being treated as such. Not knowing if he fits in or belongs necessarily in that Chelsea environment. And ultimately, you don't see the Lukaku of Inter Milan transfer over into Chelsea because, again, 70% of human behaviour is determined by our environment. There are so many factors, both culturally and psychologically, that contribute to Romelu Lukaku, the football player. But instead, the discussion is Lukaku doesn't respect Chelsea, he has a bad attitude. And maybe he's not a great guy. Like, I don't know. I don't actually know Romelu Lukaku. But the issues and the solutions lay much deeper than a player's bad attitude. So the big signing didn't fix Chelsea's problems. What will is their ongoing work and progress, which is a large part securing their own culture and identity. Again, growing their team instead of building one. Not expecting big signings to resolve those problems that they have. The biggest and best example of that, again, is Paul Pogba. A different player for France than he was for Man United. Someone expected to improve a team and a culture, but in many ways it became a victim of it. I had a discussion recently about quality players and process and which should be prioritised. And Man United over the past 10 years, to me, is an example of why you should prioritise process over individual quality. So signing quality players that ultimately don't progress and contribute towards the whole team. And Pogba really being the pinnacle of that. When you prioritise signing those quality players, making big signings over the work and process within the club, then you don't get long-term progress and success. What you're ultimately creating is hollow, really, and eventually it will just crumble. When these big signings do work is when they're integrated well within the team and given the patience needed to find the footing both culturally and technically as well. And in that, Jack Grealish is a great example. Someone who hasn't flown out the gates straight away, but has come to Man City with the intention to learn and adapt his game amongst some unbelievable players. And he evidently has a manager and a coaching staff around him that understand that process. Because 100 million is a big number. And because of that, there is a greater pressure from fans, from media outside of the club to perform. But what appears to be the case from interviews and so on is that the staff around the players are diminishing the pressure from the outside and then focusing on the long-term process of Jack Grealish, the player. They clearly have key performance indicators that they want him to work on. Clearly they're looking at his development and growth within a larger system. And rather than him coming in and making an impact, what they expect is him to grow and develop within their current system and processes. So yeah, they've signed quality for a lot of money, but they've done so in a way where they have a long-term perspective as well. Seeing how it will grow within the team and be a solid part of it within many years to come. And by that, they are prioritising process over quality. There's not a lot that goes on during pre-season, so really fans only have the signings of players to latch onto, which is understandable. And of course, they do make a big difference, but without the right functioning of a club, with proper long-term vision and processes in place, then these big name signings are really just papering over the cracks. And like so many signings before, they're not really going to live up to their price tag because it is culture, mind, action, result in that order. And no money or quality is ever really going to change that. Other than that, the only reason I'm actually looking forward to Man United signing any players is so people can stop have been talking to me about them signing whoever and why they should be signing this and that and tell your dad to do this and that. He's not in charge of signings, so stop asking me. And why would you listen to me anyway? We just don't talk about that. Anyway, I hope there was something informative there for you lot listening. And thank you again, as always, for watching and listening. I'm enjoying doing these by myself and doing them as regularly as possible. I hope there's people out there listening and watching that are enjoying them. But yeah, thank you for watching and listening, and I'll see you again next week.